Hello all and welcome to episode 71 of the 3 for 1 Sky Fantasy podcast by fantasyfootballhub.co.uk with our final pre-overhaul episode as we look to crawl over the line with games being postponed all over the shop. Absolute chaos as usual. Ruined this evening for me, Paul, I would say. My name is Fergi and I'm joined today as usual by my co-host Paul McAnulty. Paul, how was your Sky weekend?
Yeah, not too bad. Fergie moved up from, I think I was dead 100 in the last pod, so up to 68th. I used one transfer. It was always in plan, so I'm pretty happy with the way things were going.
Fantastic, good work, mate. I used 3 transfers last week. I had my first mini meltdown of the season. I did the Norgard move, and obviously that didn't pay off in the slightest because he didn't even get anywhere near the tackle bonus. I don't think. I think he was quite close to passing bonus, but he didn't get there in the end.
50 passes.
Yeah, but then I saw the lineups on the Wednesday, and this West Ham. Was it West Ham Norwich? Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And I was just looking. I was just like, oh my goodness, oh my god! I've saved my transfers. I've been so good, and I actually moved Norgard straight to Antonio, which was obviously, I mean, he blanked, which didn't really matter. He got the assist on the weekend, but yeah, it was a bit silly trying to go all in on Norgard, then moving on to Antonio. But I did make a further transfer on the weekend. I kind of preempted Arsenal and Spurs game being called off, and I still had Ramsdale, so I did Ramsdale to De Gea, which hopefully I'll work out. I think he only got 4 points, maybe.
4.
But obviously, he's got an extra couple of games, including Brentford. But I'm down to 20 transfers now, and down to my absolute minimum overhaul. Got a big decision this week to make on Friday, I think, which we'll no doubt touch on when we get there. But
yeah, it was an interesting week for me because I know that it's a common perception that you can't go up the league by picking the players and captaining the players that are highly owned, but I didn't have many returns outside of Bowen, who I knew would be the most captained against Norwich, so I captained him. Cancelo I captained on Saturday. I did pick up Laporte's 10 points to go with Cancelo, so it was unlucky for Diaz owners, but he was a one player on top of the captaincies. It worked out. I captained Gallagher, and then I captained Bowen again on Sunday. So I wasn't doing anything out the box, and yet still managed to make 32 places up whilst being in the top 100. So there's definitely a lot to be said. Again, I say it quite a lot, but these players are well owned and well captained for a reason, because they continue to churn out points, and people are trying to deviate away from that, and you can still keep captaining them and make progress.
Well, to go from 100th to 68th is quite, nearly halving your rank, just not doing anything. Just Laporte really won it, was kind of like a differential. But you are right.
That's right.
There's no player, even like Bowen and Gallagher, they're highly owned, but there's very, very few players at any one time. Maybe, I think obviously Bruno was last season, Salah has been this season, Cancelo this season, like 95% plus. Anything other than that, it's different to Sky, isn't it? Sorry, it's different to FPL in terms of EO. Of a single player will never exceed 100%, will it? So it's
because of the captain. It's because of the single day captain, or the calendar day captaincies.
Yeah, indeed. For any new watchers and listeners, you are very, very welcome. If you haven't subscribed yet, please press the subscribe button at the bottom right corner of the screen. Set the alerts so you don't miss our podcasts and live streams. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. Today, we'll take a look at the highest owned players as usual, have a quick kind of rundown of the weekends, then look ahead to the remainder of Game Week 23, which is very sparse, and ahead to the final weekend before the overhaul, before taking on plenty of questions from Twitter. Thank you so much for those sent them in. And finally, have a quick look at my team update, 3 transfers I used last week, Paul, and some mini league standings. Good evening. Dale Turner is in this evening. He's going with Thiago Silva over Rudiger tonight. Seems to make more passes and could be a good differential. Julian Wardle, evening Fergie. Good to be able to drop in live for a change. Great to have you with us, Julian. Ben McCrum, Glenn Murray, John Maloney, Mopai versus Rudiger, the matchup we've all been waiting for. Sean Thorpe, who's made a really good point about Chelsea this evening, FF Thinker, which I'm sure we'll touch on when we get to that match. Tom Hartnell, haven't been able to catch live for a while. Tom has also started doing his own fantasy football podcast. If you don't follow Tom Hartle on Twitter, make sure you do. And Glenn says, yeah, Fergie throwing those extra transfers away. Pete S is in the chat, and so is Gordon. Good evening to all of you. Obviously, this podcast will be out, well, at least part of it will be outdated in a couple of hours' time. So let's get to it. And firstly, look at the top 1K ownership with Cancelo, as I mentioned earlier, 97.8%, Ronaldo 89, Bowen 78. I suppose the interesting one this evening for me is Rudiger at 76.3. So what are your
This went down a little bit. This went down a little bit, right? It was about 80 before. But I can see those that haven't owned Rudiger having done pretty well recently. He's only Money Hall came in the Sun game as opposed to the Sky game because he scored and kept a clean sheet in the League Cup, which counts towards their points format. And I can't remember who you had mentioned there, sorry, that had said about the passing stats for Thiago, like looking at Thiago Silva instead of Rudiger, because Rudiger's really dropped off in terms of passing now. So yeah, I know there's been a few questions about whether I would bring in Rudiger if I didn't have a captain tonight. I would be more tempted if Thiago Silva played to bring in him. But then taking on point Sean FF Thinkers, he's done some stats on it, and only 11 players picked up passing bonus against Chelsea this season. Against Brighton this season, 6 of which were Liverpool, and that was when Reece James got sent off. So 5 players out with that game. I think Thiago Silva would be my choice if I was, if I had free reign on a captaincy choice tonight. Yeah,
Rudiger. I looked earlier. I think his last 3 scores were like 2-1-1. I think he's, I don't think he scored many at all, is he? He hasn't been good, but he probably is the hygiene pick this evening. So I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm just begging for the overhaul to arrive. Not so much because I'm excited for the overhaul, because I think a lot of teams, will be the same. But I just want to. I feel like I've had the same team for so long now. It's just getting stale, and there's not much excitement, is there? Whereas after the overhaul, we're gonna have all these extra Burnley games, Leicester games, Spurs games. There's a chance to just completely refresh our teams more than anything.
I want to get to the overhaul and change the team, but I'm not excited about changing my team because I think that a template will form for it to start based on fixture rearrangement. So by what I mean was, I want to get to the overhaul as I don't have Trent, and I'm just going to put he'll be a lock for me, and I'll just put him in and then forget about it. Yeah. And if there wasn't an overhaul, I would have transferred Trent in by now, but I'm just waiting to save that transfer to get him in.
Yeah. Looking further down, Gallagher still in 75% of teams, which is lower. It's higher than I thought, because I thought that some people on the weekend would have taken him out on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I had thought about it. I am, even though I missed out on 2 points potentially, I'm glad that I held off. It was when the Watford, so I'd considered doing that 4-for-1 and taking Gallagher out and bringing in King or Dennis. They play the Newcastle game, so you get 1 game there. They play the Burnley game, you get 1 game there, and then they play the Norwich game, and you get 2 games there. Essentially 4-for-1. Yeah. I wouldn't move back to Gallagher. But I'm glad I've held off on that, and I did because of the Burnley cancellation at the weekend.
Yeah, definitely, it's massive.
They're never going to recover in time for Watford. They would do their utmost to not get the game to go ahead as well, because it's a cliched 6-pointer for them, and Chris Wood isn't playing. Obviously, they've sold Chris Wood as well, their talisman, so you can see them trying to reinforce their striking options before they play the return game against Watford, whether that's rearranged for just before when the end of the overhaul is supposed to be that FA Cup weekend. I know there's talk of potentially moving it in there, but that's not from the Premier League. That's from people considering how Burnley's going to rearrange all their games. So I'm kind of glad I held off on that, even though I might lose out on 2 points by doing so.
Trent 58% owned. I haven't held him. He's been a bit of a thorn in my side. I don't hold him mainly in Sky because of the passing, but it's just his assists. He gets assist more than the defenders get passing bonus, don't he? He's unbelievable. So yeah, he's looking pretty essential for the run, I think, and he's at 10.5. And the next one down for me is probably the most interesting. Dennis 47.5% at 5.5 million. Obviously, those who haven't got anyone or who went with King are maybe breathing a sigh of relief this evening because I think Dennis probably is the better option. I would say, but my dilemma this week now on Friday is obviously we get to see the lineups, and we'll touch on this when we get to it. But I'm wondering now just to whether to use a transfer, but listen, just listen, hear me out.
Norgard, I don't know what you expected of Norgard in one game to then make the move to Antonio the game.
Well, I didn't plan that, did I? I was being reactionary. It was one of those weak moments where I was planning on leaving in Norgard, but the difference with Dennis on Friday against Norwich is that I've got King. I've held King for weeks, right? But if I don't go Dennis, I've worked so bloody hard to get my rank to where it is on my transfer account. It could be destroyed in one evening if Watford do one on Norwich and Dennis scores a couple of goals. I'll feel for the sake of I'm almost thinking of selling my buying my rank at Overhaul because I'll have the highest owned captain on Saturday and Sunday, and I'm happy. It's kind of like using a transfer to make sure I go into Overhaul in a decent position.
I don't think that statement's true though. I don't think you'll have the most captained player on Sunday.
Friday. Oh, on Sunday. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we'll look at that on Sunday anyway. But that's just a decision I've got to make on Friday. I think on whether to, and maybe if there's an injury, it makes it easier. But we will. We'll see. Let's catch up with the chat. Dan Cox, Sky Bite Size in the chat. Good evening, Dan. Great to have you with us. Kieran, a question for us that only have Ronaldo for Wednesday. If he doesn't start, should we use a precious transfer to a Spurs Leicester player for a 3-for-1? I'm not sure I'd be doing that. What about you, Paul?
If I had someone that was definitely not going to play, like Smith Rowe, well, okay, Smith Rowe might play, but there's question marks over him, or Livramento or someone like that I was still holding as deadwood. Maybe that would be an opportunity. I wouldn't take out a playing player for it, I don't think.
Okay. Paul Jones, one deviation with Antonio over Bowen versus Norwich, and Paul has left me eating his dust. It's incredible how these one decisions, these one pick sort of.
I used to. It's just a way that my style's kind of morphed now, and I just, as I say, it is boring and don't like to think about it too much. But there's captain, whoever's the highest captain, and as long as you play the long game over that, then I think it works out the best. Maybe that puts me at a position where I'd be unlikely to win the game overall because I don't take as many risks as others, but I can accept that.
We're still early in the season, right? So even now, still, Spurs, Burnley, Leicester, is it maybe? Still haven't played half their fixtures yet, I don't think, have they, for the season, or they're close to half.
Burnley's got 5. Leicester's got 4, Arsenal's got 4, Spurs, Everton, Watford all got 3 to be rearranged.
So in terms of that, the pie chart of the season, of the total games to play, we're roughly halfway. So, if you can have a very, very good ranks, that company inside the top 100 with halfway to go, you can then choose your opportunities to strike, can't you? Rather, well, if you strike too early and you miss, your season could potentially be over, couldn't it? Whereas if you choose later on, at least you get yourself into a position where you've got a chance of winning it. You're never going to win it in October, November. You could win it in April or May with a couple of really, not like lucky decisions, but things that go your way, sort of thing. Rude Boy is in the chat. Says at least one Burnley player overhaul. I can imagine Nick Pope probably being quite quite popular.
I was thinking this last night. I was thinking about it, and that was my initial thought. No, he would be the only Burnley player that I'd be picking, and that was my initial thoughts. And then, but Arsenal have got 4 games to rearrange, and Ramsdale's been a much better keeper this season. So unless Burnley had a standalone game, I think I wouldn't bother. I think I'd have Ramsdale. We'll see. We'll obviously talk a lot about that in our overhaul special next week.
Dale Turner. I was convinced Norgard was on for a hat-trick. After hearing Fergie. Oh, I didn't make the move myself. Thank goodness for that. He stung me earlier in FPL with a Dharma trial. Dale, some of them worse. Some of them worse.
Do you know? Like the Norgard move's been better than the Antonio move that I made.
It has, because he scored
if
five.
you look at it,
Yeah.
you'll get the captaincy. You got the captaincy, so you get the 2 doubled to 4. You got 5 points at the weekend. That's 9 points. I made the move to Antonio from Salah, and I've only got 6. And Norgard's got 2 games to Antonio's 1.
Exactly. So Norgard was the better pick than Antonio.
You're swearing at me after I'm defending you and giving you and saying you didn't move to Antonio though.
I know. I'm an absolute pleb. I've used 2 transfers for absolutely nothing. Barry Morrison is joining us live for the first time. He watches every week. No Watford assets, so did I just skip Friday now? Just in top 500 with 21 left. It's a good question.
Yeah, I've not got any Watford now. It's genuinely a consideration now, because I've almost put myself in a worse position by not making the Gallagher move in terms of the dilemma I'm under. What I'm hoping for is that one of my players is ruled out for the weekend, and then it's a true 2 for 0 by making the move to a Watford player.
I think you're overthinking it, mate. To be honest, I would.
You're just talking about bringing Dennis in to accompany King for that same reason. No. I'd argue that.
I think you're overthinking it, because Dennis's ownership now is nearly 50%. By the time the match kicks off, it's going to be 70-75%. And you're thinking of going.
I'm overthinking it. I should just get.
You're saying I should
just do it regardless.
I'm saying you're overthinking it in terms of the extra game. I don't think it matters. Like, unless you're taking out Cancelo.
It makes it easier decision on who to take out, though, right? Like, obviously, if someone's out and they're not playing, then I just take that player out. Of course.
But you're not going to take out someone like Cancelo or Ronaldo or anyone like that. So I think you just got to do it, Paul, because as I say, that's a prime example of where you've worked so bloody hard and scraped to get into an amazing position you have. If Dennis does score a couple of goals and you lose 30 points, that could you back down to 150, which is still a good position to be, but you trade a transfer for that, wouldn't you? I think. Anyway,
15 points. 15 points is what you want, right? So a goal
would do, wouldn't it? Yeah. John Maloney says Cornet 7.7 million mid. He's maybe one we talk about next week in the overhaul special. And Matt Woolley says the average team has now played 20.1 of their 38 games. That's fair. But like I say, normally at this point in the overhaul, going into February, there's we're a bit further along, aren't we? We're normally at like 24, 25 games, so there's still a long way to go. Okay, so let's have a look at the fixtures this midweek, just in a bit more detail. Then first one this evening, as we know, Burnley and Watford called off yesterday, which is a kick in the pants for anyone who owns Watford players. Really, so I got King. I suppose it's kind of made the decision easier. I'll be going Rudiger, as I'm assuming we're like 70% of the top 1K. Paul, you going Rudiger?
Yeah. I own Alonso as well, so I've got backup.
Oh, nice.
Rudiger doesn't play, but I think Rudiger will play.
He plays every game.
I'll play the ownership.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't have a captain, so you mentioned, would you go for Silva or would you leave it?
If you were taking out a player that doesn't play, like I said, like the couple of examples I give, like Livramento, Smith Rowe, there's big question mark. Even if Arsenal's game is on, there's big question marks about him. I think that I would make the move. You get 3 games with doubled up on the captaincy, and it would be Silva that I think that I would move to if I was doing it. Or Rudiger if you want to rank protect.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. It's not a game for me. Like, if I look at this game compared to maybe Watford and Norwich on Friday, there's a player or two which stands out, don't they? But it's just because it's Brighton. If it was Brighton, maybe Leeds, maybe something like Man City, but there's not many other teams. You'd expect Chelsea to get close passing with everyone, but because of the stats against Brighton, I just don't think is a standout option. I mean, the top you can possibly hope for, maybe in terms of someone like Rudiger is probably 9 or 10 points, but it's more likely going to be 7. But Brighton are pretty good going forward as well, aren't they? So it's not like it's an easy one.
They're good at defending set pieces as well. So against the Rudiger threat. from corners.
But yeah, there's not really, for me anyway. I can see this game being maybe 1-0 either way, 1-1. I can't see it being like a blockbuster by any stretch. Two good defenses, two well organised teams. Can't see much there really. So I would personally skip. I say that after I brought in Norgard last week for Brentford. On Wednesday evening, we've got Leicester and Spurs. I did see a rumour yesterday. It was on a forum I follow actually, saying that Leicester may be struggling for players. Haven't heard anything since. Haven't heard anything official, but you may want to just keep an eye on that throughout the day, saying that Leicester may not make it. But Leicester and Spurs, Brentford and Man United. Another part of the reason why I brought De Gea in on the weekend was obviously because Ronaldo wasn't there. I thought maybe a bit of backup. And obviously there was the rumours of the Spurs game not going ahead against Arsenal. I mean, what a weekend, mate. Like, normally you have to make a decision for a couple of fixtures in advance, but we had to make a decision based on potentially games not going ahead, maybe going ahead, and and lies from managers about players being fit and available. It's just, it's hard work at the moment, isn't it?
I was almost disappointed in the way that the information came out about Ronaldo, because I thought some people might have captained him on Saturday. I captained Cancelo, and I was always going to captain Cancelo regardless of what was stated at the. I just think the way that Man City set up against Chelsea, the chances of getting a clean sheet and some bonus was pretty high.
Yeah. I think he got an assist against him in the other game as well. I think.
That's right, he did. Yeah, he did for Bernardo Silva.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So thoughts, Ronaldo, if he starts because of his ownership?
I think so. I think I'll captain Ronaldo, and then I'll own De Gea as well. So it would be a default drop back to De Gea. If you didn't have either of those, or rather you had Ronaldo and you didn't play and you didn't have De Gea, I would just captain Norgard and wouldn't do anything else, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
If you want him, or Brentford, that's it.
Any love at all for any Leicester or Spurs players at the moment?
Same rule. I guess the same rule applies. What I was saying about the Brighton Chelsea game, that if you don't have any player, so if Ronaldo's your only player tomorrow night and he's not playing, and you own someone like Smith Rowe or like Livramento, there'll be a few others. I mentioned those two because I think out of the players that there's doubts over just now, that they're probably the highest owned. I'd maybe consider making the move then.
Very cool. Okay, so let's have a look for the final 3 game days before overhaul. First one, we've mentioned it a couple times already. So on Friday, Watford versus Norwich. We get to see the lineup, which is obviously massively important. Yeah. So, Paul, you don't have a captain for this game day at the moment. We looked earlier, you play the ownership game. Dennis was nearly 50% owned. Someone in the chat, I think it was Glenn, said there's no way he'll be 75% owned. I reckon you get close to 70. I personally think you get close to 70. What are you thinking at the moment, Paul, then for Friday without any Watford or Norwich cover?
Well, the two Norwich players added together, 47 plus 20, so 67.
Watford.
So, yeah. So that's suggesting that 33% of the top 1K don't have a player. And I know there'll be a small proportion that have very few or no transfers in there as well. But I think I agree with you. I think that those two players will increase significantly if both start. If it wasn't Norwich at home,
exactly,
I possibly wouldn't do it. I possibly wouldn't do anything, but I think I will. I'll just wait to find out if I've got information on any of my players not starting. I would make the move to one of those two. I like King because I still follow penalties, although I know it's probably bad analysis to pick that. I like King for that reason, but I think based on Dennis's ownership, if I had to make the move to one of them, it probably would be him.
There was a weekend, wasn't it, a few weeks ago, where there was like a penalty in nearly every game, and it just so happened because I was having a bit of a debate on Twitter because I'm not a fan of non-pen XG when said player has pens his locker, because it's just a fact you should always consider with a player, as you just said. But there was loads of pens.
I would almost put like an arbitrary, as opposed to adding their XG from pens, almost take an arbitrary number of the average penalties per game. Maybe a little bit more for attacking teams or something like that. But yeah, similar. I'm sort of in between.
Cool. Okay. In my position, if you had King, would you just captain King?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely wouldn't be bringing in Dennis if I had King.
We'll
I'd rather using a transfer on one player towards the end when you've already got coverage. What the amount of times that I've made a transfer in the past and the player that I've brought in, if I had just kept the captaincy on the player I had before, and it's paid, and it would have paid off.
But I actually don't mind if King then does well and Dennis doesn't, because I'll still rise in rank because I own them both.
Okay, so if you can have that mentality, then that's fine. But I'd be annoyed with myself.
Okay. I'm more. The only move I'm annoyed with is Norgard to Antonio. That's the one. I'm still happy bringing in Norgard because he's likely going to score the 15 points, right?
Yeah.
But I think with this Dennis move, like I say, I think it's preserving my rank until overhaul, and I'm willing to give away a transfer to do that. Personally, anyway, we haven't touched on Sunday.
Yeah. If it was me, I definitely wouldn't do it. But it's easy for me. It's easy for me to say that because I've got neither. But I definitely wouldn't do it if I had one.
Okay. Early game on Saturday: Everton versus Villa. Then we have United, West Ham, Leeds, Newcastle, Brentford, Wolves, and Southampton, Man City. Cancelo or someone else?
Yeah. I'm kind of torn a little bit between Rafinha and Cancelo.
Rafinha, really okay with it. Oh yeah, home to Newcastle. Yeah, that's not a bad shout. Not Ronaldo then, or Bowen either. I fancy West Ham to score a goal or two away to United.
It's for me. It's one of those two. Rafinha or Bowen. Have a look at Dan's poll. See who's top. Yeah. I feel that Cancelo will probably be top, and I'll therefore pick him on that basis.
Okay. And then Sunday, 3 games at 2:00. So we get to the Lions for Leicester, Brighton, Palace, Liverpool. I know where you're coming from now. Sorry, and Arsenal and Burnley, and then finally Chelsea and Spurs. Yeah, just looking at my team actually, I'm quite sparse with options for this day. I'm assuming you're talking about Trent maybe as the highest owned captain.
Yeah, I think he'll be the highest captain. I think that all 60% of Trent owners will captain Trent on Sunday.
I can't get.
If you had Trent, would you captain him?
I don't. I can't get excited away to Palace. I think as Palace are a good team. I think Palace will score, and then you're just relying on attacking output. And don't get me wrong.
Fair. I just think there's no other standout option. I know that
I agree,
Rudiger based on ownership, but it's not.
Actually, looking at my team, I think I've only got Rudiger. I hadn't even thought about it really.
Have you moved out Gallagher? Have you?
Oh no, I've got Gallagher. Sorry, I've got Gallagher. Yeah, so either Gallagher or Rudiger. But I think I'm happy on that one because there's no for me. Like Salah would have been a standout option, but because I think that the Palace will score. That's why I'm not that bothered about not owning Trent. If Trent gets a 10 or 13 pointer, fair play to owners, but he's very unlikely to get any more than that. So I think my risk there is kind of mitigated.
If you had him, would you captain him though?
Maybe, but only because of ownership. I wouldn't expect much more than 2 to 5 points.
It's more exciting captain Trent than it is to captain Rudiger, I think.
Rudiger, maybe. Gallagher is another one. So sorry.
Yeah, I think just when I think that the majority of people that have Trent will captain him, and I would if I had him. But I'm not making a transfer to get him in or anything like that. I'll definitely be just captaining Rudiger.
Good point, actually. Yeah, Rudiger against Spurs. So as we know, watching Chelsea play Spurs the last twice. Chelsea have, apart from when Spurs finally had the boot up the arse and they were 3-0 down, Chelsea just, knocking the ball back and forth. I quite fancy Rudiger for passing bonus in that one, actually.
Yeah, it's just, I think, Rudiger just doesn't, I don't know if Chelsea's changed the style of play, but he just doesn't seem to be anywhere near passing bonus recently.
A couple are saying Ramsdale or Arsenal Burnley. Obviously, Burnley have got no strikers. I would say that game has the potential to be at risk potentially because obviously both Arsenal and Burnley have postponed their games because of COVID in the last week or so. So just something to be aware of there. And Glenn just said, so Rudiger was on 70 passes versus Spurs by the 50th minute in the cup game. So Rudiger is maybe not the worst option after all. Yeah.
Okay. So it's the one format of fantasy football. Like I was paying attention to the game for the sake of other formats, but I didn't bother counting the passes because I didn't qualify for Sky. So that's good to know.
Stephen Murray Bruce, hello everyone. I'm crying as I can't set my captaincy because I'm outside the UK. VPN not doing for me. The Sky FF app is too strong.
I sent him a DM with details of some VPNs that I've used in the past. So
there we go.
Hopefully it sorts out.
Tunnel Bear I've used, and there's another one I can't think. I think I used
Tunnel Bear NordVPN.
That's the one. I think that's what I use. Yeah.
You can use the 14-day free trials on them as well if you set a reminder to cancel before they.
Boom. Okay, let's have a look at some questions. We probably answered a lot of them, but let's go through some. Auto Reclose asks, I have no captain. Is it worth bringing in Rudiger for Gabriel? Can we potentially a 3-0 if Arsenal Burnley doesn't go ahead too? Do you think Rudiger for Gabriel would be worth it? It's hard with the Arsenal Burnley because you would expect Gabriel to score reasonably well against Burnley at home, wouldn't you? But what do you think? I'm not sure. It'd be like a rank preservation pick for me more than anything.
Yeah. If I had over 20 transfers, yes. Under 20 transfers, no.
Yeah, fair enough. Brookie, is it worth bringing Tielemans in on Wednesday for Smith Rowe or Livramento? So this is your point, Paul, about players not playing. Would then captain him Sunday against Brighton, as only other captain would be Rudiger against Spurs.
And if you have a player on the Wednesday night already, as in Ronaldo or De Gea or even Norgard, I wouldn't make the move and just captain Rudiger.
Okay. Luke NDN, Pope after overhaul. They're going to have so many games in hand. They'll have their own designated game week at this rate.
He always does seem to do well. Like Burnley seem to do well defensively towards the end of the season, don't they? As I say yesterday, I was looking at the games to be rearranged. So Burnley have 5, Leicester have 4, Arsenal have 4, Everton have 3, Tottenham have 3, Watford have 3, and then the rest have 2 and 1. So we were talking about, there's going to be a backlog of Chelsea games. Let's bulk on the Chelsea games. But there's going to be loads of teams that's probably lined up like that as well. And I think Arsenal with 4 games in hand compared to Burnley with 5.
Yeah, it's good show. Unless
there's a standout game that, we're picking Burnley players. I would much rather have Ramsdale than Pope.
Yeah. Jay Dalgano, if Burnley versus Watford are off, would you bring in Chelsea player? So I think, we've answered that now a couple of times. Maybe look for a player like Smith or Livramento who's unlikely to play. I personally wouldn't swap a playing for one, but I take your point on Livramento because then you're getting like a 3-0 then, aren't you? Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and maybe a 4 if you're going to captain them on Sunday as well.
Good shout. SkyFF Bruno, how do you stop yourself from making FOMO transfers? You're asking the wrong person here, mate. I fell into both the Dennis trap and Norgard trap last week. No, Norgard wasn't a trap, but when sat with Salah, I should have just gone the safer Trent route yesterday, but had large fun with the single days. Feel like wasted transfers. I think just to start off on that one, I just think it's so easy in hindsight because if Trent hadn't have got the assist yesterday and whatever else, you may not be so thing. So it just with hindsight's easy, right? But
Norgard move's not a bad move as well, right? I just gave you the rationale of why I think that, and I didn't do it, and why I think it was a good move. How do I stop doing it? Have a look at my team for the long term and what I want to achieve. So, did I have a lot of transfers to use at that time? And if I had a lot of transfers to use, I probably would have done the Norgard move as well, or brought in Mbeumo or someone like that to cover off the captaincy, or Ward-Prowse. I think there were the 3 kind of players that I'd considered, probably more so Norgard and Ward-Prowse, based on ownership and kind of Twitter bubble thing, I think, which I stay off Twitter. So there's a couple of times I've done this. So Livramento, we talked about on the pod before, I didn't make that move, and I was annoyed with myself to begin with, and then within 2 weeks, by me doing what I'd done, I'd saved the transfer, and I had made more points by doing what my original plan was anyway. So
Bloody
I'd stay off
Gehi.
Twitter after the game. I'd stay off Twitter after the game as well to not, because it feels like ownership, effective ownership's like well over 100% when you look at social media after some of these events as well, and have a like. Yeah, I just think about where the upside was. For me, there was a bigger upside in the Antonio move than the Norgard move. And what were we talking about Norgard's ownership? I think he jumped to 28% in the top 1,000. I had guessed 20. I think you'd guessed 25. Or 26. It was 26 or 28 he jumped to. And how much, like, you were in dreamland talking about goals and stuff like that. Whereas like a more realistic thing would be that he might pick up tier 1 passing, or he might pick up tier 2 tackles. Was more realistic, and therefore am I losing 10 points? It's different than Salah at home to Norwich and not wanting to make a transfer for the sake of not making a transfer there. So have a think about it, and then if you don't want to feel down about the outcome after the game, like I did in the Liverpool one, just take yourself off social media for a while. Switch your phone off.
I think that's the key part, isn't it? Is, I think you learn to do this over the years. Is I now only really make a transfer, and this is true, if I know afterwards I'm not going to be angry about either outcome. And it's easy to say, but even my shitty transfers last week, well, Norgard to Antonio, I kind of made the decision that even if it goes wrong, it's, I wasn't annoyed with myself, even though it was bad, because I had the rationale in my head. You've got to remember the rationale pre-deadline to post-game. Pre-deadline is when you have to make the decision. You can't make it in hindsight. So, and he's got 2 really good examples here. Actually, he fell into the Norgard trap. Now, I don't think that was a trap. I think it was a sound move, and it looks like it is a sound move. Now, the Dennis trap for me is something which I did feel wasn't a good move personally, and it was purely because it was very likely, as is transpired, that the Burnley-Watford game would be cancelled this midweek. Now, you weren't going to captain him, and I think that's a big thing in Sky, innit? Is you were never going to bring in Dennis on Saturday to captain him, because one, you didn't know if he was even playing, and there was a better captaincy option anyway. So I think that one, for example, could have waited, and you could have even brought him in this evening if it was on, or you could have brought him on Friday. So for me, that one was avoidable. The Norgard one is fine, and to say I should have gone for Trent. If Liverpool had conceded and Trent hadn't got the assist, you'd be thinking much differently. So that's my tuppenny's worth on that one then.
And Trent was 50% owned at the weekend, and scored 10 points, and I didn't own him, and I still made those 32 places up. So
FPL Foxy, interesting one. How does Sky rank in terms of enjoyment out of all the footy games that we play? Honest answers only, please. Interesting one. Paul, where does it rank Sky in terms of all the fantasy games you play?
It's my favourite game, and that's why I do this podcast. And I wouldn't do the podcast. My original, so I did a few podcasts with Mark Edworthy before, and then you'd asked me to join this one, Fergi, and I did those podcasts because I like talking about Sky and thrashing out ideas and getting other people's perspective and laying it out. And I think that's like tightened me up in some of the kind of looser ends of the way that I used to play the game. That it's beneficial to me as well. So, and I play Sun, Telegraph, FPL, Fan Team on top of this, and Draft as well on top of this. But yeah, Sky's my favourite game.
I think it's in the. Not sure for me. I think my opinion of Dream Team has changed a lot over the last year or two for obvious reasons. But I think now that they've increased it to 5 transfers a month, and because it's got European games and all this kind of stuff, I do find that much more enjoyable than I did a few years ago. Because I think a few years ago, when you had the transfer windows, it's bloody luck, right? Whereas you're much I prefer games where you're largely in control of your the destiny of your teams. I don't think you are in FPL. I don't think you're largely in control, because once the deadline goes, sometimes your team stays the same for 2 weeks, and you can't control anything. Look at it now with Ronaldo, for example. Whereas in every single other game, in Dream Team, Telegraph, Sky, you can make a decision that will have an outcome of taking Ronaldo out, or wherever it's going to be. So I think I would have definitely said Telegraph, then Sky, probably then FPL, then Dream Team, maybe a year or two ago. But I do think now, I think Telegraph and Sky and Dream Team actually are very. I really enjoy all of them. I really do, and I enjoy them all for different reasons as well. I like the Telegraph because it's a pure. It's like a war of attrition in it. The Telegraph. It's like you can make gains. Like you think hold transfers back in Sky, they're even more powerful holding them back in Telegraph and jumping on teams at the right time and stuff. Dream Team, as I say, because you've got like the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup and Europe is fantastic, because you get every match means something, which is great. And and Sky, for all the reasons that you said as well, Paul. The captaincy, the planning. I do think that Sky has been has been a bit harder this last year or two with COVID. I don't think we've been able to, plan as we used to. But then, as you say, that does bring opportunities for engaged managers, doesn't it? To be on the button and, have their finger on the pulse, be able to make decisions. So, like all of them, really. FPL, I would never say this on Green Arrow, but probably FPL is the one I least enjoy. But it's purely because you're not in control of your team for the vast majority of the time. So, Dale asks around Overhaul. We will answer a few more around Overhaul. Wonder Cat Venus, can you recommend a retailer that sells clear crystal balls? Paul, what we got here? Paul, you're listening to this. This is this podcast. Paul in 68th place. Hopefully, going to go on and win it. We'll touch on Overhaul picks and David Martinez. And Dan mentions Burnley block defence. We'll touch on that. Overhaul. And last question, it was from Dave Simple Goals. We got into a bit of a discussion the other night with Dave and Ian Parrin and a couple of others just around, Dave is obviously flying high. I think he might be fourth at the moment, and he was asking questions around why having transfers at back at the end is maybe more important than using them now and trying to attack. And I kind of gave my view, and Ian was giving his view. But he asked a question. I haven't got it in front of me, but it was roughly on the lines of, would you rather be 10 points clear with one transfer left, with a couple of weeks to go in the season, or 40 points? No, sorry. Would you rather be 10 behind with one transfer left, or 40 behind with 4 transfers left? It's all about this, the kind of value of a transfer, and in terms of when they're important.
Yeah, I think there's other factors to consider.
Yeah,
one of the main factors, there was a couple of seasons back, 2 or 3 seasons back, I can't remember which one it was, where a lot of the highly owned players were injured at the end of the season. So with 4 weeks to go, players were pulling up, and it might have been more than 2 or 3 seasons ago, but I remember it. And players were pulling up, and what would normally be like a 2-game miss, players just get ruled out to the end of the season. I think a lot easier. Like, why would you rush players back for 1 game set or 2 games, particularly if there was less to play for those clubs as well? And I think I ended up having like 6 or 7 playing players in the last day of the season because of it. And I always just think that there's a lot of opportunities there. But on the flip side of that, I'm not sure what my answer is to it, because on the flip side of it, any transfer I make, I think of the longevity of it. So I think of it for 3 or 4 weeks in advance. So I want to cover off this one captaincy, like for the Watford Norwich game. Or is it that I want to bring in a player like Tielemans, who I wouldn't be captaining in a game, but I know that his constant returns, and I'm getting the 1 game extra coming up, and then he goes on 4 or 5 games where his fixtures are slightly better than Bernardo Silva's, for example. And I know that Tielemans is expected on average to return more over this point in time. You can use measures like points per game per minute, or points per million per game. Or we can use any measures like that to think about those returns as well. So it is difficult, and I think I would take other factors in than just the pure, there's 4 games left and there's 4 transfers, and the points difference in that sense. I know that kind of makes me sitting on the fence, but I've given an argument, I guess.
It's good, and
why I think,
and it may be good, as we approach the end of the season, to maybe have a podcast about that around the tactics of not only winning the whole thing and what to think of, but also winning your mini leagues, right? Because one of my arguments was, and this is what happened with me with Dream Team last year, is I just blocked everyone off because I made sure that I had more transfers than anyone else, for the majority of the end of the season. Whenever anyone made a transfer, I just copied it, and I always made sure I had 1 or more transfers left. And it may sound like a bit of a boring way to play, but it's the game within the game. I do think that the phrase, I just picked the player who scored the most points, is a bit of an easy thing to say, maybe for people who've never been in a position to, kind of win a big mini league or to think. But when there's, a lot riding on something, it could be money, it could be pride, it could be whatever it could be. When actually all you want to do, or the only thing that's important, is not scoring as many points as you can, is winning. I think your tactics just change. And Ian Parron gave an example, I think, on the thread the other day, saying that you're going to be working out who every manager has got in the top 10 and trying to work out who they've got by working out how many points they've got and all this stuff, and blocking them off. But you can only do that if you have excess transfers. You can't do that if you haven't. And bear in mind, probably everyone else around you will be doing the same thing. So I did it's not quite as close, but I'd use an example. I think 3 seasons ago I got up to 17th in April. I didn't really have designs on winning it per se, but I was hoping to squeeze maybe into the top 10, and I had, I think, one or 2 transfers going into the final 3 game weeks, and I finished up 92nd, and I didn't have a bad team. I just ran out of transfers, and everyone around, don't forget, you're getting attacked from all angles as well, aren't you? It's not just one person. You're getting attacked from behind by people who've still got 5-6 transfers left. And Ian also made a really, really good point around game week 36, at kind of FPL game week 36 is going to be a big double, and there will likely be multiple game days, leading up in that final month. So, the trick or the right answer to it, and it's incredibly difficult to do, but it's to get yourself into a position where you've got a chance to win with enough transfers to get lucky. I think is kind of how I'd frame it, but it's hard to get there. And we talked about, or I talked about at the very start about, I had Laporte as one differential that's done well, but I captained the most captained and not most obvious players. I don't think that there's been that many obvious moves to make recently. And yet I recall seasons, like you and I have talked about this many a times, that Antonio Norwich game, but more in particular, the Burnley were on a good defensive run at the time, and they were playing 2 of the weakest attacking teams in the league back to back on single captaincy days. And goalkeeping transfers aren't perhaps the most glamorous, but Pope kept back-to-back 11 pointers. That's 44 points on transfers that I missed out on one transfer that I missed out on, which is a move that I would 100% have made, that all engaged managers that had transfers left made, because it stuck out like a sore thumb. I don't think there's been many of those in the last kind of few weeks, whereas these come up quite a lot often. And it's not just because it's at the end of the season. I just want to make sure that if 2 came up in a week or 3 came up in a fortnight or something like that, that I've got the moves in the locker to make what I would deem as obvious moves that most people would make if they had the transfers to do it. I know I probably mention it every single podcast, but Antonio versus Norwich was a complete game changer for those. Was it last season or the season before. For those who had the transfers in hand, they could afford to gamble on that.
Here's an example as well, right? And again, this is unglamorous, but what happens if it comes to the season, right? And like Salah's up, like most people have Salah in the team again post overhaul, and you see a 3 for nothing, right? So you've got Salah, and then you've got 3 games in which period of time Brighton have 2 captains, single day captaincies in that 3-game spell before Salah plays again, and they play weak opposition. So Salah to Dunk and captain and Dunk and 2, like even if he didn't captain in the 3rd game, captain one of those 2 single game days. You play the 3rd game and then you move it back to Salah. That would be a move that I would want to make if given that opportunity. And okay, it sounds a bit far-fetched. It has to be Brighton. It has to be 2 games. But I've mentioned Brighton as a team that's probably not in the top, not in the top 10 teams in terms of player ownership just now. So it's not a gimme that everyone will have Dunk in their team or Webster in their team at overhaul. And there's a prime opportunity that I wouldn't want to miss out on, because I'd be burning transfers at points in time where I don't think that it's clear and obvious moves. But again, it's my own style. I can understand people have made the move. People might have made the move to Trent and captained them over Bowen on Sunday. You made 4 points initially. You've got what I'd argue is the best captaincy on this Sunday coming up as well. So there was an opportunity that could have taken. I don't think it was as obvious as other moves in the way that I think about it anyway. And that's the reason why I told back some transfers.
It wasn't as obvious as the Norgard to Antonio chain move, was it?
You know what I mean, though? Like that Pope move would have been.
Yeah, of course.
Like you and I don't think you did it either.
No, I couldn't. I only had like 5 transfers left, and I knew I'd plotted them all out because I knew where I needed them. That's the thing is,
you needed Kane, or you needed Salah, or
this is it. Every final transfer is normally a hygiene move. It's normally I have to do this just to keep up move. What you want are the ones you can have back, that you can afford to take a bit of a gamble on something, like Antonio versus Norwich, like Dunk for whatever it is, and you can guarantee Ian Parrin will be up your backside, because he will have plenty of transfers held back to attack those exact matches that we're talking about. So there's obviously no right on or answer, right? Because obviously when Dan won it, I think he built up a lead, didn't he? And he kind of ran out of transfers early. I do think the game has maybe changed a little bit since then, potentially, with obviously the advent of all the podcasts and all the content and players just picking up the game, FPL players picking up the game and playing it kind of really, really, really well and stuff. But I think now, if you're at the top, you can have a good 15, 20, 25 players still gunning for you with a few weeks left in all different positions with different teams, different transfers left. Let's just have a quick look at my team at the moment. So I've got De Gea in goals as my Ronaldo backup for tomorrow, which will be Wednesday. I've got Rudiger captain this evening. It actually still shows as king because I took this yesterday. King as captain. Obviously, I haven't got that anymore. I have changed it on the app. Diaz, Cancelo. Diaz was a big miss on the weekend. That is just a. That's what you pay the premium for is appearances, isn't it? And he didn't appear. Gallagher, obviously, absolute superstar. Silva, who got tackles.
I was annoyed about that. Yeah,
and then got taken off.
It happened to Alonso as well. It was credited with the 4 tackles and then moved. Yeah.
Rodri, who got passing, I think it was. Bowen, obviously, on fire. Antonio, Ronaldo, and King. So my plans this week, obviously, Rudiger this evening. Ronaldo tomorrow if he starts. If not, I'll go De Gea. Friday, I'll wait and see. I'll probably just go King, but if there are news that either Ronaldo or Antonio go in to miss out on the weekend, I will. I think I'll do it, and it may be mad, but I think don't roll your eyes at me, Mr. McAnulty. I think I'll do because it's a 3. Oh no, it's not. It's a 2. It's a 2, isn't it? What are you on about? Only a
It's
two.
not really a two, and it's not really a two for nothing because you're losing one off king by not captaining king as well. So it's one. You're gaining one game from it.
I'll see near
If
the
the player's
time.
out.
I think I think my days of writing articles and being able to say my exact plans have just gone out the window. I was halfway through my article last Friday, and then obviously the news dropped about, was it Burnley and Leicester was called off, and it was just like, oh, scrap it all. And it's so difficult to say what I'm going to do because I don't know until the lineups are announced what I'm going to do a lot of the time. But anyway, yes. So that's my team. Hub £500 league. We've got Thomas Ford in 10th, 9th place, Michael Shipley, 8th, Joseph Finley Bader, 7th, Kieran Sutton, 6th, Kieran Sutton, 5, Maurice Weeks, our very own Carl, 4th, Christopher Ray, 3rd, Luke Notley, shot up from 13th to 3rd. He must have had a very good weekend. Carl Weeks is also in 2nd. Liam Stevens is top, quite a way clear in the Hub £500 league.
Christopher Ray, that was George Weah's cousin, was it not? Played for Arsenal.
Oh right. Oh yeah. It was EY, wasn't it? But yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Liam Stevens, Frog Skills FC is 5th overall. So very, very well played there, Liam. Well done to everyone in the top 10. You are all absolutely flying. Four Nations League. The Dragons' backside has gone, Paul. It's gone. Liam Dorian's second team is 10th, yours is 9th, Ian's is 8th, Dan's is 7th, and then there's a big jump. I won't report on those four anymore because they're probably gone. 6th place is Liam's first team, the Wonders, with 1841. I think he didn't have Bowen, did he? I think that's what's killed him this last week. And unlucky Liam is that's a tough one again, just the one player.
Liam and West Ham midfielders, remember Lingard?
I do.
Last year as well.
He refused, didn't he? Dan's team, 1847. He is right on the coattails. My second team is on 1861. Ian is ominously moving up, isn't he? Because he has got a lot of transfers in hand. Ian is just 4 points now behind my second team. My first team, which is second overall on 1888, which is ranked 279th. And Paul McAnulty is, 54 points in front of me. Very nice. Laporte gave you that little boost, you absolute swine. But yeah, Paul is clear at the moment, but I'm sure that Ian is going to have something to say about that come the end of the season. I'm sure, and Dan will probably, I'm sure. Hopefully I'll still be in the mix until a reasonable point in April or something, but we will see. But all very, very close indeed. And well played, Paul. Well done. That is it from us this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, as usual, for joining us live. Hopefully, we have given you some. Paul has given you some tips and advice to get safely towards the overhaul. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching. We really appreciate it. Paul, thank you, as usual. Where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1, MCANULTY.
And my Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. So this podcast and video will be on the Fancy Football Hub, Sky and TFF YouTube channel, and also available in all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. And remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave some comments. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. So please follow and feel free to ask any questions. Billy Anderson, did I just miss the whole live pod? You did, Billy. 5 o'clock. You did, but watch it back. It's all obviously still relevant. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football and Sky and FPL and everything all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, up to stats, top player team reveals, and much more. Thank you so much, Glenn, Tom, Metallica. All the very best of luck to you all this evening. We will be back over the international break with the wonderful, the marvellous Ian Parrin, looking ahead to our overhaul special. What I'm really looking forward to, we'll try and do a big, deep, long beast of a pod, Paul, if you can, over there. It's always good to get chat. We'll see if we can somehow get maybe Dan and Liam involved as well if we can. You will not want to miss that one. You'll have to settle in for a full evening of Sky Overhaul chat. Stay safe all. Have a great game week, and goodbye for now.